Okay, today we will be exploring Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, a monumental piece of literature, a classic that has transcended across time and has aged like fine wine. It explores topics and themes such as nihilism, tragedy, morality, ethicality, and more importantly so, human nature. And it does so in a very fashionable manner, very tasteful, and it's one of the reasons why Fyodor Dostoevsky is so popular, because he managed to cram these very important existential topics and managed to make them palatable. So, and Crime and Punishment perhaps is the best demonstration, of that ability. So let's just do a quick summary. Crime and Punishment is a book about the main character Raskolnikov. The protagonist is a poor 20-year-old boy, early 20s, no source of income. He's very poor. He wants to move forward with his life, but he's living in extreme poverty in an era where you don't really have as many opportunities as well. And so he sees the opportunity to make money by killing a horrid lady which hoards a lot of money through her business of trading valuable goods. And so in his head he thinks, okay, if I kill this lady, she's a horrible person, so first of all I'm getting rid of a horrible person on earth. Second of all, I'm getting a bunch of money to push my career forward. I can also help other people that are in poverty and in terrible conditions. He also wanted to prevent his sister from getting married because she was going to get married with a rich man or a well-off man in order to get out of poverty. Raskolnikov hated this, so now he said, okay, I have to take amends into my own, I have to take my own hands and fix all of this, and I don't know what to do. I'm poor, I need to fix this. He goes ahead, he murders a lady, and the rest of the plot is essentially Raskolnikov dealing with the consequences of such. Now, one of the very important aspects to understand about Crime and Punishment is that it is not about the plot. It's not just about what Raskolnikov does, but rather what the psychological repercussions are to his actions and to the actions of the characters surrounding him. In this novel we have extremely interesting characters like Sonia, for example. Sonia being a very young woman that has to engage in prostitution in order to feed for her starving siblings, because her father would not stop getting in crippling debt due to his strong addiction to alcohol. And so she just has to take matter into her own hands and selling her own body, which is extremely tragic, but I think Dostoevsky makes a good job at normalizing it, and morely so bringing a humane side to it, because she's not just a streetwalker. She is this walking conundrum that while she is a prostitute, she is this woman that is giving herself for a greater good, and she has not necessarily committed any criminal act towards a person or acted ill. In fact, she carries a Bible with her in a lot of scenes of the novel. She's a very innocent, pure person that is going through a massive amount of misfortune. A lot of this book is about poverty. A lot of this book is about the tragedies brought upon by poverty, the impotence and the fancy of what you could do if you had the power to do things, right? So Raskolnikov imagines what he could do if he had this money, how he would change the world, how he could actually make things better if he had the money. If the right person had the money, if the right person had the power, there would be a change, there would be a better world. That's what Raskolnikov believes. And so that's why the ball gets to roll in the story, because he enacts that sentiment and it all snowballs. Either way, going back to my previous point, the importance of this novel relies not only in the plot and the moral questioning, but rather in the psychological depth of the characters, how they enact according to the circumstances. Also about guilt, but the guilt that Raskolnikov feels about what he did. He manifests his consciousness through being ill, physically ill, and rambling in a schizophrenic fashion. And there's this great hint of there's something going on in your head with considering the times and considering that Fyodor Dostoevsky is a precursor to both Freud and Nietzsche. The idea that there is something in your head going on, and that there's something beyond just what you understand at face value. So Dostoevsky managed to understand this and display this through his novels. The understanding that there is an unconscious, that there is a unaddressed desire that goes beyond what we understand from ourselves, and that we can even allow ourselves to say, or that we even know about ourselves at, say, face value. And so the exploration of these themes is very predominant in the novel, and it does recreate for scenarios that can be familiar. And that's what I find very interesting and very captivating about the novels by Dostoevsky, is that his understanding of human nature and psychology, and perhaps the unconscious as well, illustrates gracefully through the novels, because it is something that at times is relatable, regardless of it being more than 100 or maybe 200 years ago. It's there, and you can understand why the characters act in a certain manner. It's very important to point out that the characters that are presented through the story, not all of them, but a decent portion, aren't just tools to get the plot across like we can notice in lots of modern novels, but rather the characters that are present in this novel twist the narrative of the story and sway things in a graceful fashion. It's not forced, and they don't just work as a stepping stone, but rather as a big rock in the middle of the way that things have to, work with or work around. And so this is one of the greatest hints that we can see about the development of the idea of psychoanalysis. We can see that Fyodor Dostoevsky had a strong grasp about the unconscious, or about psychology altogether, before psychoanalysis was even developed as a concept by Freud, which Freud was also, I don't, within my lack of understanding of various themes, I like to make the connection that Freud was somewhat of an apprentice of Nietzsche and Dostoevsky as well. We can also see a very strong hint of the Superman Übermensch, the Overman, that would be introduced later on by Nietzsche through the ideals of the character Raskolnikov. The character himself presents a thesis in which he believed that a man that there was a special kind of man that could defy the laws of morality and ethicality for the sake of a greater good. And, someone could very easily make the association with the Overman, the Übermensch, right? And so this is somewhat of an attempt of the Overman, of the guy trying to defy the laws implicated by societal norm and to try to enact it. But then, at least in this novel, what ends up occurring is that his own consciousness betrays him. And which is funny because he essentially gets away with a crime. He essentially has everything, quote unquote, in his favor. Nobody suspects of him. He does not have any strings attached to the crime. He gets all the money. He's essentially, in theory, he's a free man, but he does not feel that way, and that is mostly what this theme explores. And heading towards the end of the novel, or progressing through it, it becomes more and more clear that in order for Raskolnikov to feel healed in a certain way, he has to have this manifestation of a physical punishment, or a punishment to hold him accountable for his actions. It's extremely interesting considering the fact that this book is about, I know it was the 1800s, I'm not sure if it's like mid 1800s or earlier or even later on, but it is extremely interesting considering the fact that it is more than 150 years old, and that we can still relate to the protagonist, we can still relate to other characters, we can still see the embodiment of people that we know, of people that we have known in the characters that are present in the novel, and how it's not just a poor axiomatic characterization of people and personalities, but rather a in-depth analysis of why people are the way that they are and how they act according to what they have at hand. A great exploration of nihilism. Religion as well is in the middle of it. Very interesting conundrums, very interesting dichotomies. It is a hard book to push through. At least I personally did not find it to be an easy read, but I did find it to be very, very fulfilling, very fruitful, and very enlightening for certain aspects, mostly because it reaffirms certain beliefs, or actually brings questions as to your core beliefs of things. And so if you really like that, food for thought, Crime and Punishment does really bring into the table some questioning that is perhaps millennia older than writing itself, and it can bring some confirmations, and it can bring some more questioning, and it can bring some negations. And I'm not saying much by saying that, but it is a sort of a guide itself in psychology, if there is such a thing. I believe it to be so in a certain fashion. It's a book to be read slowly. It takes its time. It's not just to be rushed through. It, for me personally, whenever I stop reading it and I retake it again, and I start rereading it again, you have to kind of like heat up the machine and like push through it a little bit and kick off the rust so you can catch up to the pace again. That is a common theme amongst Dostoevsky books, at least on a personal experience. So you might want to get used to that, reading back 2 pages or so just to get back on track with what's going on. I personally like to find a setting, a rundown cafe while you smoke a cigar, or going at a park with a beautiful scenery. You're sitting down and reading your little book. Well, it's not little, but I also found time to read it through public transport, going to work or coming back from work. I just pop it open and read it. It's very rewarding if you allow it to be. It's a very somber book, but I think it's not edgy. It's just very kind of like tragic and dark, but in a very tasteful manner. It's not just evil or nihilistic for the sake of being nihilistic, but rather it's kind of like the humor with which the book gets through life. Very gloomy. It's set in St. Petersburg, Russia, so at least from what I recall, things are gray and there's lots of snow and there's lots of poverty and lots of economic inequality and lots of illness and sickness. But the setting and the dementia presented by the characters, because a lot of characters lose their mind. The whole gloomy setting and snow ties it all together to make it a perfect theme for such a book, and for allow for such analysis and for such a development of story. Crime and Punishment, fantastic novel. I think that if you have the time, and you can find the time if you really put your heart to it, it's really worth a read. I would rate it a 9.8 out of 10. Fantastic book, and I think that anybody that is a literature / psychology / philosophy aficionado cannot really miss it. It doesn't make sense to not pay attention to it, and it is rewarding if you're into this type of book. Anyways, that's my analysis of Crime and Punishment, and I'll see what I can review next.